The following podcast is an enticing media production.
Where the Nell have you been? Join us for conversation about life, business, and everything in between. Welcome to What the Nell, where we've got stories to tell. Here's your host, Nell Tice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the What the Nell podcast with yours truly, Nell Tice, and a very special guest. I know you might be expecting Steve Trott. He is on hiatus for today's episode. However, I have dare I say, the best thing, not the next best thing. My guest for today is Metro Mikee Bentz. Welcome, Mikee, to the podcast. I do want to introduce Mikee as best I possibly can because there's so many amazing things about Mikee. So first of all, Mikee was born in his favorite city, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Harrisburg really is lovely. He lived in Throughout his childhood, he lived in various locations, including Lawton, Oklahoma, Würzburg, Germany, Columbia, South Carolina, Hanau. Is that how you say that? Hanau? Hanau, thank you, Germany, and numerous places in central Pennsylvania. But not limited to Harrisburg and Dillsburg, home of the dill pickle drop. That's right. Mikee was raised in a military household and was educated with an emphasis on respect and empathy, as well as understanding that everyone has an important story to tell. My gosh, is that ever true? Mikee started his beauty career in March of 2010 as an honors graduate of Susquehanna Township High School. He attended Empire Beauty School in Harrisburg and graduated with perfect attendance as well as a 4.0 GPA. Oh my gosh. His first love was manicuring and nail art, but his true loves are haircutting, hairstyling, and expressing his clients' feelings through hair color. It's so beautiful. He is a fully licensed cosmetologist and cosmetology salon owner with a current Harrisburg City business license, 7 awards for excellence, and over 13 years of experience. He's very passionate about the craft of hairdressing as well as other focused areas. He is currently in central Pennsylvania as the only male pole art and fitness instructor, and fulfilled his dream of opening his very own pole dance and aerial art studio. I love it. I absolutely love it. Metropolis Dance Studio. He's also very passionate about food and where it comes from. Holler, and is an avid gardener if free time allows, as well as being a mini activist running against the March Against Monsanto Harrisburg chapter for 11 years. We need to talk more about that. It would be his pleasure to help with any and all of your beauty, health, and fitness needs. Official welcome to the podcast, Mikee.
Thank you, Nell. That was so good. I sometimes forget where I've been and what I've done in my life. So thanks for the reminder.
I can't even imagine what a fulfilling life. It is so, being all over the world, doing what you love to do and breaking barriers as far as what you're doing is just so incredibly admirable. And thank you for doing that and sharing your gifts with the world.
Yes, and after all of that, I just truly realized that Harrisburg is my favorite place, and I honestly could be anywhere, but I choose to be in Harrisburg, and I came back here to set up my business empire, which is going and growing strong.
I love it. And we'll have more and all of the information about where to find you and how to connect with you in the show notes, of course, to the episode. But today we are talking about the series that we are doing called Don't Follow Me. And I am sure that you have had quite a few experiences with follows and subscribers and things like that being in a very public space. So I really want to talk about some of your thoughts, especially pertaining to clickbait and false sense of promotion. And so I don't know. So how familiar are you with like the YouTube space?
I probably consume YouTube as my main source of social media
Mm.
at this point. I used to use Facebook a lot. I've been on Facebook since 2009, so I owe probably 25 to 33% of my business
Wow.
to Facebook because that was my main way of marketing. And I was on that, kind of while I was in beauty school. I had a little flip phone that could take photos. So I still have albums on Facebook of like my work in beauty school that I took with this little flip phone before I graduated and moved up to the iPhone 4S. So I was super familiar with Facebook, and then Instagram came out. But YouTube, as we all know, it's the second largest search engine in the world, which is totally like acceptable because Google, its parent company, is the number one search company in the world. So YouTube is actually a great place. It's one of the first places that I subscribed to not watch ads. So I feel like I live in my own little bubble in real life, but then also
Mhm.
in social media, because where I consume a lot of my content is ad free. So I'm not sold to, I don't get a lot of that clickbait. I am very out of touch with the advertising scene and the
Mm.
advertising marketing world when it comes to being shown that stuff. Now, marketing and advertising myself, I could, give a master class on that. But yeah, so I'm familiar with YouTube.
Yes, that's so I bring up YouTube because that's the space that I'm most familiar with, and clickbait especially because there's so many videos and creators out there that are doing really wonderful things, and I'm loving their videos, but every time I see a title where it's like the worst has happened or disaster has struck. And I'm watching the video and I'm going, so where's the disaster? Where's what I was promised? And the titles can be so clickbaity and things like that. But I'm really curious. So you've pretty much curated a life on social media where you don't have, I don't want to say access, but you're not given that opportunity to be sold to all the time, which is amazing. So, can you kind of walk us through how you were able to do that? Because I feel like it's so oversaturated for so many of us.
Yeah, and this I don't know if it's like a teachable skill or anything. And, disclaimer before I share this, I try to live in the most realistic world possible and utilize the best facts and working theories. But with that said, I'm a Libra. So one of my ruling powers, if you will, something that Libras are known for is a deep sense of intuition. So like that voice in my gut that just speaks up, that one where it's like, ladies, is he cheating on you? If my voice says, yes, he's cheating on you, then 9 times out of 10, he's cheating on you. Um,
Oh,
so that power has kind of like infiltrated my whole life where I love a good clickbait title, but I can almost intuit before I click on it if it's going to be an actual thing where I get to see the disaster, like that train wreck I can't look away from,
right.
or if I'm like, okay, this is super sus. We're not even going to waste our time here. So I don't know if I can teach that to anyone.
Oh, I mean, no, but that's really great advice because you're literally using your own instincts, following your gut. And I don't know that a lot of us really truly understand that you can do that in the social media space. It's so when you're out in the world and, if you're driving or you're coming up on something that feels super sketchy or something like that, we always tap into that to intuition, but I think that we're less apt to tune into that when we're just doing social media because we're so groomed in so many ways. So that's really interesting. But in regards to the clickbait, we had actually posted in the What the Nell Facebook group a couple of questions, and I was obsessed with your thought process because this is not something that is also very mainstream. And I'm really, really curious to hear, the why behind your answers. So the first question we posed was, what do you do when you come to the realization that the person or people you are following aren't who they portray themselves to be on social media? So we had a lot of comments here, but I am so interested and I'm going right back to it right now. So you had answered, I prefer the ones who overreach or express a curated appearance slash business slash lifestyle because I usually wouldn't be inspired, motivated, pushed harder by their true, authentic self. If any person I follow ends up being someone that crosses a hard boundary of mine, like terroristic threats and things like that, then I certainly do remove myself from their influence. Okay, so explain to us what is the thought process behind the answer that you gave?
So, like I said, I think it was like an edited caveat that I put on that, where if somebody is crossing a hard boundary, which me, my,
Mm.
support system of friends, family, my wonderful therapist, who I never give his name away because I don't want somebody taking my spot because he's very busy. But what I have done with all of these people is figure out where that line in the sand is drawn. And I very forcefully maintain those boundaries. So if somebody on social media were to cross a boundary that is unacceptable by my beliefs and opinions, then I have no problem moving on from that. But what the main meat of that is or vegan meat, for those
Yes.
inclined.
Yes.
But the main point that I was trying to make is I love seeing curated feeds on Instagram. I love videos that are edited, not necessarily filtered, but things that inspire me to learn more about cinematography, or
Mm.
things that inspire me to learn about photography, editing, Photoshop, Lightroom, investing in cool products like microphones or, good high-tech cameras. I love seeing those things because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's something I didn't even think about or know. So how can I elevate my content, elevate my strategies, elevate my marketing, or, my spirituality or
Mhm.
whatever, facet it is? How can I elevate myself to that level and be
Mhm.
inspired when truly I know that the people putting out that content, just like myself, I curate a lot of things. I don't know if you can see my background, like I have a curated background. I love doing those little things because it helps me feel better in my space or in my social media. But the same way that I know that my life is messy and my life is not perfect and it's not everything that I show, I still love portraying that or viewing those that portray that,
Mhm.
whether or not they're actually, and not 9 times out of 10, they're not that person. And so I'm much more inspired by the people they pretend to be than, and this may sound a little passive aggressive, but I'm much more inspired by the people they pretend to be than
Mhm.
probably the people that they actually are.
Oh, that makes so much sense. When you explain it like that, it's like ding, 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 the energy saving light bulb is going off. And that makes so much sense. And it's interesting because I am myself am in this space of video production. So I'm constantly looking for, the next best thing as far as equipment. What's going to make me sound better? What's going to make me look better? What's going to make my clients' lives and people happy and exceed their expectations. So we're constantly as a society looking to elevate in certain areas like that. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when you turn the camera inward, it's like who wants to see the real like the actual reality? Nobody really wants to see all of the messy stuff. Like would you ever consider putting something super personal like a fight you have with a significant other out there? Like is that actually something that we always talk about? I want to see the real stuff. But I mean, that's not intriguing. So, what are some boundaries for you that you would say, okay, I'm not putting this out there, or oh, I don't want to see that from them again? Like, what are the boundaries? And then what would make you hit that unfollow button?
So just before I get into that, I have done, oh, I don't even know if I would call it research, but I've read a few things and searched a few things about like the law of attraction. And so
Mm,
for me, one of my boundaries is, I don't want to call it toxic positivity, but it's a little toxic positivity. I always want to talk about the things that inspire, the things that I love, the people that I want to be around. I would much prefer talk about that because if the law of attraction is true, then I'm bringing all those positive things into my life.
Mhm.
Whereas, the same thing goes when I'm speaking about negative, ideas, topics, subjects, places. I feel like the more that I dwell on that, the more likely those things are to come into my life. So
Mm.
while I appreciate talking about those things, there are like, I'm not a huge fan of celebrating like mind and mood altering substances. Like, I know that
Mm.
there are people who love, going out on the weekends or recreational party activities or, things like that. And that's fine. My name is Mikee with two E's. I go by Metro Mikey, but the two E's in my name stand for the environment and everyone. Those are the two things that I care
Mm.
about the most. So with that, the environment comes first, because if we don't have a planet, we have
Mhm.
nowhere to live. We have
Yep.
nowhere to fight. We have nowhere to argue about politics. We have nowhere to do all of those. So that comes first. But then after that, I truly unconditionally love every human. I believe we're all born great, good. If we go off that path, I think it's learned behavior, something traumatic or forceful pushed us on that path. So every day when I wake up, I just believe that all of my fellow humans deserve like every best opportunity that they possibly can get. So when I see people doing things to the opposite of that effect, violence, crime,
Yeah.
substance abuse, all of those things, it's like, I'm not going to take that away from you. I'm not here to be your mommy or your daddy. I
Hmm.
don't need to tell you how to live. I just will remove myself from the situation.
Yes, that's pretty wonderful advice that I think a lot of people probably should follow or at least consider following because again, we're not here to tell you how to live, but that's some really sound advice. And it's very disconcerting when, like you, I find that somebody is disrespecting certain things, especially coming across with the environment. It's funny, I just had a conversation the other day with somebody. I said, I've been waiting to record a What the Nell episode about where our food comes from and the corruption and all of the things. And I'm like, now in my head, I'm like, well, I know who I need to record that with.
Who, me?
I mean, no, it's there are so many things, and that's a perfect example of it because we have such this like the food commercials. Let's just put like a I don't want to call out any brand in particular, but like a fast food restaurant putting a hamburger in front of you, all the layers, it looks really pretty. Then there's the food styling. So, how many people know that like gooey cheese most of the time is like Elmer's glue, you know? It's false.
Coffee is usually soy sauce. Whipped
Mhm.
cream is usually shaving cream.
Mhm.
Yes. Ice
Yeah.
cubes aren't even ice cubes anymore.
No. No. So it's this false representation of what you can expect, not to mention the fact that it looks pretty. It looks like it should be good for you. And then it's not because, everything is bioengineered. Anyway, so I want to get more into what you do for the environment and who you are in regards to what you care about and love so much.
Yes, man, I don't even know where to start, because I remember in beauty school, uh, I was 22 when I went to beauty school, so a little bit late for, my college start, but a little bit early to get into my career. But I was 22, knew little to nothing about the actual world, and just started hearing like rumors and whispers about genetically modified organisms, GMOs.
Hmm.
And that was something that I was like, okay, that sounds a little weird. Not sure what that is. My husband ended up picking up on that and did a little bit more of a deep dive and came back to me with some of the information. And that's where we learned about the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. So there were certain foods that you could buy conventionally in grocery stores that were pretty safe and tested and organic and natural and all those buzzwords to put in our bodies. And then there were certain things that were just laden with pesticides and herbicides and bioengineering and things that I support the science. And I definitely know that there are a lot of good researchers and developers who are trying to do the best that they know how for the world at large. there were just things that were being pushed on us, sold to us, marketed to us that hadn't been tested fully.
Mhm.
Things that we still to this day don't really know the long-term ramifications. I know that we just went through a global pandemic and people were leery about, vaccines and what are we putting in our bodies. And
Mhm.
then those same people would DoorDash McDonald's to their
Mhm.
house. And I'm like, well, I hear your argument, but I take your opinion a little bit less valid because the hypocrisy there just was yelling in my face. So that's when I started doing my own deep dive into what we should and shouldn't be putting in and on our bodies, which translated very well into my beauty career because
Yes.
I luckily had fallen in love with a company that was made for hairdressers by hairdressers with they actually had three E's. So it was
Oh.
environment, education, and ethics. And I was like, oh my gosh, the company was Chi, which I don't know if you've heard of the flat iron. It was like
Yes, that was all
award
the
winning,
rage.
all the rage. So it was like Chi with three E's and Mikey with two E's. And I was like,
Aw.
this is a match made in heaven.
Yes.
So, luckily, as I was educating myself on what to put in and on our bodies, that translated right into my career, which got me some attention from local groups. And there was a group called March Against Monsanto, Monsanto being the company that used to have all the patents for genetically modified foods, produce, crops, seeds, and interestingly enough, they got bought by Bayer, the medicinal company,
Oh,
because they had
wow.
three patents for genetically modified cannabis. So I don't know if you can see where that may or may not be going, but that interested me. And I got in touch with the lady who was organizing at the time. And she was like, my life is a little bit hectic right now. I don't know what to do. I had already become friends inadvertently with the head organizer from St. Louis, Missouri, Tammy, love her. She started the whole thing. So she was doing Google spreadsheets with all the different places. I met people from Pittsburgh and Philly and Virginia and all that fun stuff. But I ended up taking over the Harrisburg chapter. So I hosted 8 rallies over the course
Wow.
of, I think, 3 or 4 years, right on the Capitol steps. It taught me a lot about civics and how to express my constitutional rights, like peaceful assembly, freedom of information acts, and stuff like that, which then led me into, oh man, this is so convoluted, which then led me into my current salon, which I believe is the most sustainable salon. I've been running on solar and wind power for, I think I just got my most recent letters, 55 months now.
Oh my God.
So like we're closing in on like what, 6 years or something, 7 years.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
It's in a building that was built in 1868. So I kind of saved the storefront from 152 years, 153 years ago. Most of my furniture is recycled. I use, very good products to put on my clients and then down the drain because I am a steward of the Susquehanna River. So the things that I'm putting down the drain are not, causing all the ecological disasters that people talk about in the Susquehanna. I use special shower heads in my salon that use half the water and double the pressure so I can be more efficient when I'm working but use half the resources. So it's translated into every at home. I'm actually broadcasting from what I call my YouTube studio right now.
Mm.
Directly above my head is solar panels that I
Uh,
purchased and power my whole house, and I actually feed some back into the grid. So luckily PPL sends me a small check like every
oh,
April.
that's amazing too.
So it's a worthwhile investment while I also sleep better at night, knowing that I'm doing my part for the ecosystem and the environment. So I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there. I'll
There
send it back to
is.
you.
I always think of like I don't know if you remember Dawson's Creek back in the day. There was this always like this episode where the mom was cheating on the dad, and I just remember her going like being like, back to you, Bob.
Right back at you.
Anyway, oh my gosh, that's dating me or Anna or us or whatever. But so yeah, no, that's amazing and congratulations and thank you for doing everything that you are doing for the environment. And it's interesting because I feel like sustainable products and especially in like the beauty world get, a bit of a bad rep on certain platforms because they're not work, they don't work, or they don't have, the strength that commercialized and mainstream products do. Mostly, I don't know what to believe because I don't know the science behind, but I do try to personally do my part with a lot of products, especially food. I'm working into the cleaner side of beauty, but I think that especially with like the TikTok, influencers and people and, girls and people like that, pushing certain products just because they're being paid to do so and they're not environmentally friendly and they're big brands, and it's causing all these 10-year-olds to go to Sephora and like knock all the displays down and things like that. I mean, so first of all, what is your take on whether or not the products actually work versus mainstream, like pushed, influenced products?
Ooh, okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. I try not to give blanket advice.
Mhm,
If I am going to give blanket advice, I usually go to like the root of the issue, but the root of the issue is going to be different for every single person.
mhm,
So, a question that I got a lot in my career, especially concerning like eco-friendly, if I were to only be able to afford one beauty or hair product, what is that one product that I should spend the extra money on to make sure
mm,
that it's hitting all of my values and core beliefs?
mm,
And for me, my answer is always going to be the shampoo. Your
mm.
shampoo is your number one tool that makes everything else in your hair arsenal work. So a lot of people have told me, Mikey, I'll just get the conditioner because I heard that I should always get the conditioner. However, the conditioner doesn't work. It's going to sit on top of your hair. It's going to sit on top of your product buildup from your shampoo. It's going to sit on top of yesterday's Aussie hairspray. Sorry, I'm trying not to name brands. It's going to sit on top of that because the hair is not properly cleansed. Then it's going to go right down the shampoo or the bathtub drain when
Mhm.
you rinse it off because the hair is not properly cleansed. So a good shampoo, I would say, free of parabens, free of sulfates, synthetic dyes, certainly, especially us blondes. Like we
Mm.
only want color in our hair if we put it, like the pink in my ends. So stay away from artificial colors. Artificial fragrance is actually something that's come up a lot. I'm a member or a mentor in the Green Beauty Coalition, which just launched at the near the end of last year, and we're going to be doing a series on the basic education, like the things that
Mhm.
I'm talking about right now, because
Right.
there are a lot of people who know way, 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 way tons of knowledge about this.
Yeah.
And then there are people who don't know anything. There's not a lot of people in the middle. So what we are realizing is we have to come back and share things like buy your shampoo, sulfate free, free of artificial dyes, not genetically modified, no little to no silicones. There are a few good silicones, but like get the shampoo, everything
Mhm.
else in your arsenal will work better. When you can afford to do the conditioner, do the conditioner. When you can
Okay.
afford to do the leave-in treatment, do the leave-in treatment. So it's
Yeah.
just taking all of this knowledge that I have and going back to the basics. When it comes to skincare, another
Yeah.
thing that I absolutely love, and I'm an ambassador for a vegan skincare line that is
Mm.
amazing. And I don't know if you can see my skin glowing right now,
It is glowing. I
but
wanted to
like
tell you that earlier.
this morning I did a teeny tiny retinol treatment and then layered an SPF vegan reef safe moisturizer over that. And like it's so good. I absolutely love it. But going back to the basics, if you want everything else to work better, even the stuff that you haven't necessarily invested in, high end, elevated, vegan, cruelty free, start with your face wash. That's
Mm.
going to be your number one layer of defense.
Yeah.
You're taking off everything that shouldn't be there, and you're
Mhm.
using something that any great face wash is going to have moisturizers in it already. It's going to have
Mm.
effective cleansers that aren't damaging to your skin or when it gets washed down the drain. So,
Mhm.
whatever we're doing, we just want to start with that base layer, that
Mhm.
first thing that's going to make everything else easier.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really great advice. And thank you for being honest about where to start because, anybody could just go to TikTok and see an influencer and say, "Oh my gosh, you should totally get this cleanser and this entire product line because they all work well together." And you know where I'm going with this? That's just clickbait. It's just stuff that is not actually working. It's sitting on your hair, it's sitting on your skin, and it's not doing anything. It just Honestly, it's just packaging and marketing. Looks good sitting on your counter. I used to do that when I was a kid. I'd have friends come over and I'd put my products out so nicely because I wanted them to see what I was using and think, oh, she's an it girl because she has, you know. But I mean, it's great that and I love that you bring in your core values and your ethos and all of that into deciding what to use and not just allowing headlines or a good advertisement, pretty packaging to make your decisions for you. And that's really to be respected. So, how would you encourage people to look past all of the pretty, the fake, all of that stuff and fluff and get to the real core products? And how would you recommend that somebody get away from that mindset of looking at the popular stuff?
That is not a question that anyone likes the answer to. And
Yeah.
I have a decent audience on social media. I have a great and very dedicated and loyal clientele, whether it's my dance studio or my hair salon or the few other places that I do business. And that literally comes from me being self-aware and then holding myself accountable. So if I'm
Mhm.
mindlessly scrolling through TikTok, watching all of these ads, I'm
Mhm.
probably not doing the hard work on myself in the morning during journal time, at the gym when I'm listening to music and getting stronger, at the dance studio, or when the blow dryer is on at my hair salon. Like those are all times that I can become very introspective and really figure out kind of my four areas of health and wellness:
Mhm.
physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So if
Mhm.
I'm not self-aware in those, which it takes a lot of time, it might take a good therapist, it might take a business coach, it might take a leadership coach, it
Mhm.
might take a life coach, it might take a pastor or a rabbi or a spiritual advisor, it might take something outside of us to become self-aware. But once we have that self-awareness, we can be like, oh, this is a good influencer. This is education or infotainment that I need in my
Mhm.
life versus that intuitive feeling that I shared at the beginning. I'm like, this seems like a snake oil salesman or salesperson to be gender non exclusive. And I don't really need them in my life.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And yeah, people aren't going to like the answer to that because it requires work.
Everyone's least favorite. No, there are a lot of hardworking people. And honestly, something that I've been talking about in my salon this week is the different generation kind of gaps,
Mhm.
if you will. And
Mhm.
I don't think anyone's dealing with anything new when it comes to like an older generation versus a younger
Sure.
generation. But what I do know is there are a lot of people in my life of all different ages, uh, races, degrees, backgrounds,
Mhm.
socioeconomic status who are hard workers. There's just more information
Mhm.
available to us than at any time previous in human
So
history.
true.
So we
So
have to
true.
become our own advocates. We
Mhm.
have to become self aware. When we are self aware, we can hold ourselves accountable and
Mhm.
then we can make the next best choice.
So true. I love that. And actually, I thought of this. I When I mentioned the Sephora craze with all of these kids, going in and all the things, I thought about this because we're dealing now with that generation, I think is Gen Alpha. And so we're dealing with a generation now that is going in to buy these super expensive products that they see on social media. And it's now we're marketing to a generation that doesn't have any income. So no one really knows how to handle this because it's their parents that are funding all of this.
Have you ever heard of this company called Disney?
Yes, that's
Disney,
true.
for about 100 years, has been marketing to generations with no income.
That's
However,
true.
what they're actually doing is marketing to the generation with the largest earning potential right now, the millennials. Fun fact I learned: millennials have out earned every previous generation, but because of all the craziness that's going on in the world, we have less to show for it. than any. So the millennials have out earned by leagues every prior generation. But inflation, cost of goods, sustainability crises, supply chain crises, all of those things have made it to where our earning potential has been reduced to almost nothing and buying our 11-year-olds expensive things at Sephora.
I mean, who needs to put food on the table when you can buy that beautiful Tatcha moisturizer, right?
So these companies know what they're doing, and they have for a long, long, long time. And unfortunately, there's not really entities to hold them accountable. And when it comes to the grand scheme of things, I'm a little torn because I have, a 401k and a Roth IRA. When these companies who are marketing to people who might not be making the best decisions with their company and their stock price goes up, my retirement becomes more secure. And so I'm like, how much do I actually want to say about this?
Yeah.
But like, I try to be a good person, at the end of the day. So I'm like, if I can be of service and help educate or infotainment, anyone into better choices, I certainly will. But it's just life is a game, and figuring out how to play it gets more convoluted and complex every day.
It's so true. I love it. I love it. You're right. And, the best we can do is try to be the best people we can be with the knowledge that we have currently. And yeah, just be of service to people that need help and need the education and things like that. So, Mikee, this has been an amazing conversation. And I'm so happy to get to know more about you. And we'll have to talk, I would say off air. It's not even air, but we'll have to talk off air about some of the things that you're doing in the community and things, because I would love to know how I could help or be involved and just be involved. So I really, really appreciate your insight today. And I hope that this provides some clarification about how those listening can begin to decide for themselves, be more self-aware, and be aware, clickbait exists. It exists everywhere. And just decide, what is for you, what isn't for you. And yes, look inward for those answers. So, Mikee, before we go, tell people how they can connect with you and where to find you.
Yeah, so my handle on all social media platforms, including YouTube, where I post my pole dance championship videos, is Metro Mikee, or at Metro Mikee. That's METROMIKEE with the two E's, of course, because we care about the environment and everyone. Little aside there, I'm Metro Mikee because everyone knows Jenny from the block, J-Lo. So Metro actually means city, so I'm Mikee from the city.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, that's the best.
So if you ever have a problem remembering Metro Mikee, just think, oh yeah, it's Mikee from the city. Metro Mikee.
I love that. All right. All hail Harrisburg.
I truly see a big, bright, and beautiful future, even with the naysayers, the negativity, the crazy, out of control TikTok brands. Like, humanity is poised to do better than we've ever done. And I want to be leading that charge into the future instead of complaining about the past.
I love that. That's amazing. Thank you, you beautiful human, for being on this episode of What the Nell. And I'm sure it will not be the last. All right, you guys, I know that you thought that was the end of the episode. However, we have the one and only Steve Trott back from his hiatus on the episode.
No.
No, you know what? Life comes up, Steve. I get it. I totally get it. And I know that you really wanted to be with Mikee and I to talk about the subject clickbait and false sense of promotion. And I'm happy to tell you, or sad to tell you, that you missed a really, really great conversation. But I thought it might be cool to expand.
I will. Yeah, I can't wait to listen to it. At least the first, 30 minutes or so until I get on there. So, no, it's good. And to everyone tuned in, obviously life, like Nell said, life does happen. And I guess that's a quick message for everyone listening. It's like, let life happen. Sometimes when life happens, you need to just learn to go with the flow.
True.
And don't realize for yourself that it's the end of the world. You can't guarantee yourself every commitment you've ever made in your life. It's not, yes, it's great to hold yourself to a higher standard, but life happens and you got to go with it. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate the flexibility and understanding, and here we are. So
Yes, here we are. We had such a great conversation on Monday with Mikee, and I loved what he said. I love that the industry that he's in has shaped a lot of the way viewpoints on things. And, I want to I filled you in a little bit, but I want to get some thoughts from you about clickbait and false sense of promotion too. And,
yeah,
the questions that we asked on social media in the What the Nell Facebook group, the first one was, what do you do when you come to the realization that the person or people you are following aren't who they portray themselves to be on social media?
yeah, yeah. It's such a oof.
Yeah.
It's a heavy topic, and it's one that we can talk about for 10 minutes, or people can find themselves talking about it probably for hours. And I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing for me that comes to mind is, you know, if a person is willing to forego their own authenticity
Mhm.
to basically present themselves as something they're not, it says a lot about a person's character. And that's the
Absolutely.
troubling part for me. So,
Yeah.
whether it's a person you do business with or different things like that, presenting themselves a certain way
Yeah.
is, in my sense, a form of clickbait in and of itself.
Yeah,
Um,
and Mikey
and then
actually
that,
brought something up that was really, really good here. And we talked about boundaries and the boundaries that he has set up for, if somebody crosses one of them, that means that somebody's talking about violence or something truly awful that wasn't presented in front of him before,
right,
that where that boundary is. And if somebody crosses that line, then just cutting ties and completely getting away and unfollowing that person on social media is what is necessary.
I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense. And
Hmm.
the way you pose the question, when you figure out or you realize someone is portraying themselves different from who they really are,
Hmm.
that in and of itself is a boundary crossing opportunity for so many people. You have to represent yourself a certain way to understand that you're going to be accepted that way into the
Hmm.
future, into a different situation, or whatever, a future business transaction or a future meeting or
Sure.
whatever
Well,
the case may be. It doesn't matter what it is.
yeah. And it's also very disconcerting, I think, when people, there are people out there that have different personalities or different portrayals for different people. And I even did a little bit of this when I was in a previous career. My boss expected me to be a certain way, and I had built up this rapport of being a certain way in front of that person, that I became that person, but only to that person. So I felt like I was living a little bit of
Right,
a double life, and I didn't like
right.
that. And it was exhausting. And that person gave me a sense of belonging only when I acted as that person needed me to be. And that sucked. And
Sure. I mean, it's
that was
yeah,
exhausting. That's part of the reason why I am where I am now, is because I refuse to
sure.
be a different person for different people. And that's concerning too, because how do you trust somebody that is one way to one person and another way to another?
Well, yeah, and to sum all of that up, you can use one word, and that is, unfortunately, in the world we live in, it's acceptance. There
Yeah.
are so many people that will play a certain card to just feel a form of acceptance
Hmm.
instead of just being themselves.
So true.
Um, and that's the world we live in today. And to be honest with you, sadly to say, it's only getting worse. It's getting worse, not getting better.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you there, especially in the world of social media. How many times do you see a reel? Let's say there's a reel that's going viral and it's something that we can all reenact. Do we all reenact for the, how do I say, the grander access to the algorithm because we believe it's going to push us because it's a trend right now? Or do we do it to be accepted?
Well, it's a
Or
combination.
both?
I would firmly believe it's a combination of both. Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
I would strongly believe for a lot of people it's a combination of both.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the real life version of school. When everybody else is doing something, you want to do it too, right?
Well, yeah, and the fakeness of it. I mean, reels alone. Look at what's produced in the world of social media and what people put out there that go viral,
Hmm.
and look at the reality behind it. It's like some of this stuff isn't even real. I mean,
No,
it's
and there's
it's
so many
not
like,
even it's not even real. Yeah,
yeah, there's so many like diet influencers and things like that that are showing you these meals that they're making and eating. And it's like, come on, I know you're not really eating that all the time, every day, not actually living that lifestyle. It's for the camera. But
sure.
anyway, so the one thing that we didn't really get into was the second question that we had posed in the Facebook group. Have you or do you ever find yourself guilty of taking your own posts too far in any direction in regards to who you really are?
You know, it's a great question, and I guess a little bit of research on myself, I would probably come back with the answer of saying years and years ago, I was guilty of this.
Hmm.
And I used to participate in dialogues on social media that would relate to faith or politics or
Mm.
other grander subjects. And then I would find myself pursuing discussions with certain individuals or pursuing conversations that were going well beyond a
Hmm.
form of boundary, even for myself.
Mm.
Like, because I was pursuant of, in my mind at that time, a so-called philosophy that the way I felt. And I was like, I used to be the person, and when I say years ago, this is many years ago, and it's
Hmm.
I've matured in that sense, and I've learned that, you know what, no two people in this world are ever truly going to agree
Hmm.
on certain subjects. So it's okay to agree to disagree.
Sure.
But in the younger me, new in the world of business as an owner, and I would find myself running down this path of discussion and representation to say, no, 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 this is how I feel. This is the way you should feel. This is, and I just think it's part of how everyone grows. Some people
Hmm.
never, sadly, we have to say, some people never grow out of that phase.
That's true. So true.
So some people hold that forever, but in most cases, people do mature from that. They realize that, you know what, I don't need to engage in that conversation and go nearly as far.
Hmm.
I can state I can state an opinion, or I can reserve my opinion and not even state it at all, and understand that here we are. You know,
Would you
it's
call that maturity?
I would. I've always been a proponent. Actually, this goes back to an earlier recording of ours, probably a year ago, but silence speaks volumes for me. So,
Yeah.
like, there are times where saying nothing is actually the best thing you can say.
Yep.
And people say they don't understand that. But once you learn it, it's true.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this could be family matters, this could be work matters, this could be personal relationships, this could be arguments,
Hmm.
but sometimes disagreements do exist. It's the nature of the world we live in. You will always disagree with people in your everyday life, but
Hmm.
sometimes allowing that disagreement to be on the table and saying nothing at all speaks the a world of volume to the
Hmm.
subject, and
Yeah.
ultimately things can work themselves out. So yeah,
Yeah.
maturity, silence, but yeah, I think it could all be tied to some maturity.
Sure.
I think you could tie it in there.
Sure. I thought about this question a lot after we posted, and I definitely saw myself going through seasons in my social media life where I definitely took posts too far, used some language that isn't part of my daily vocabulary,
Sure.
and being in the YouTube space mostly, I see clickbait titles all the time.
Oh
And
yeah.
I talked with this about this to Mikey too, because we talked about YouTube a little bit, but that's always just so glaringly obvious to me because I spend a lot of time in that space. But I even catch myself now, wanting to put a certain title into a video and thinking, no, that doesn't have enough to do with what the actual subject is. And I see nothing wrong with giving something a title or a look that is meant to encourage people to watch and lure you in. However, my problem with the clickbait is when it absolutely has nothing to do with the subject. And
Amen.
that
Amen. You know,
that's the issue.
I think YouTube and TikTok alone can be summed up with the idea that there can be a video content message waiting for you
Mhm.
and an image to go with it that's completely unrelated.
Mhm.
And the image is done in a fashion that, you know, I hate to say this, but it's the world we live in, and certain things sell, certain things attract people. So it's like
Well,
you're looking at
yeah.
an image that's completely unrelated, and guess what? It's definition 101 clickbait because somebody's clicking on it.
It's funny you
Um,
bring that up because there are particular YouTubers that we personally enjoy, my Kenny and I. And when we first started our channel, we set out with the ambition that we would sort of follow the same values and morals of one of our favorite vloggers. And they've always
sure.
stood by the, wholesome kind of content look. Their thumbnails are very family friendly. And, that basically, because we all know sex sells, right? And there are a lot of other
Yeah, I mean that's
YouTubers that,
exactly. Yeah.
you know, put that out there. So the vloggers that I'm talking about are Kara and Nate. They've been doing this for like 9 years now or something. They have built this massive channel following, whatever you want to call it, based on their values and their morals. And they've never once had to go down the road of thinking, well, maybe we should integrate a little bit of this into our thumbnails or something like that,
Right.
which I'm really, really
Right.
happy about. But there's another couple that we follow that we like equally as much. Now, they're on their homestead, they're on their farm. The photos, the thumbnails that they're taking, they're on the farm. It's not like it has nothing to do with the subject of the video, but they put the woman in the thumbnail basically wearing a skimpy little top and not much else,
Yeah.
and it that is a way to attract people in. And we I won't even tell you the nickname
Well,
that Kenny has for her.
no, I have no doubt because it's interesting to hear you said there's a few that I've paid attention to over the years, and there's some that I follow as well. Love the content, but can't stand the clickbait. And it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh a little bit because when you look at their following and you look at their views and their hits, and I'm like, some of it is real and some
Mhm.
of it is superficial because again, they've built that for themselves based
Sure.
on clickbait.
Sure. Absolutely.
It's just that it's the nature of social media, unfortunately. And I wish I could say that it was going to change, but I probably see it getting worse before it gets better.
Yeah, I do sense, I will say, in the YouTube space, for the creators that have been doing this for a really long time, I'm getting a sense of exhaustion and actually pulling back a little bit. And people,
Right.
I've seen forums and Reddits and things like that saying, "Oh, what did YouTube change? YouTube must have changed something. It must be about the money." And I was like, I YouTube hasn't really changed a ton. I mean, they changed the way that their ads work and their structure and things like that. But I mean, on the creator side, I really honestly think that there is a little bit of exhaustion. And if something does change, it will be born out of that. There has to be a shift. Nothing can last forever.
Right.
So, but
Right.
that's kind of,
Right.
another
No,
discussion for another day.
no, I agree. And you're right. You're right. And it just clickbait in general, and I know we plan to just talk for a few minutes on this. And it's like,
Yeah.
I guess my message to everyone is like, at the end of the day, present yourself and truly present yourself.
Hmm.
Like, be the individual that you are,
Hmm.
present yourself accordingly. And if you find yourself putting something out there that's maybe in the gray area or whatever,
Hmm.
justify it or explain it or
Yeah.
be there with it, and how it fits into the grander topic of follow and don't follow me, so to speak, follow or
Hmm.
not to follow. It's like you have to realize that are we all potentially guilty? And I'm sure we are, because you don't even remember all the different things that you follow in the social media world. I mean,
Sure.
last time I looked, it says I'm following maybe, I don't know, 6, 7, 800 different things. Like, I have no idea what they are. That could have
Oh,
been something I
yeah.
liked 8 years ago.
And it's
And
not
I would look at
something.
it, right.
What's that?
But I guess what I'm saying is I'd look at it today and it would be it completely, I would probably unfollow it. So
You do. You have to take inventory, and at every season is
yes,
different. And the people that I started following 5 years ago, you're right, maybe aren't the same people that I want to follow today. But that doesn't mean you can't
right,
go back either. So I don't
right.
think it's a lifelong be all end all decision. And it really has to do with your era. What season of your life
You
are
know,
you in?
it's something that we can say that would never happen in the world of like social media. And I guess almost specific Facebook or Instagram is somehow if they built in a tool in the behind the scenes part of the software and the technology that basically something were to expire. So you follow something today,
Mhm.
and then if you don't interact with that page for like 12 months,
Mhm.
it automatically expires. You no longer follow that page. Now, I know that I'm being superficial here, but in the reality of all of us on social media, I guarantee if anyone right now, any listener right now, get on your Facebook page, pull up your profile, click on your following list, and go find something from years ago, and you're probably going to find plenty of things that no longer apply to your life.
If they're
And
even
it's
still there.
like you just said, are if they're even still there. But
Mhm.
do the inventory, unfollow what's not relatable for you,
Yes.
and follow what you should be. I mean, we are what we feed ourselves. We are what we feed
Mhm.
our brain.
For
And
sure.
I don't know. What are you what are you following? Because what you're following is what you may become. And is that good or is that bad?
I think that's the perfect way to end this episode. That was the
I
perfect
knew
thing
you
to
were just going
say.
to say that, and that's exactly why I said it that way. I knew you were going to say it.
I
Good
love
job,
it.
Nell. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, a little bit of editing
I
is going
get.
to be
I guess you
required
need to.
to
I guess you need to put a couple. Well, I
put
was
a
just
couple
going to
what?
say you better put a plug in there put a couple plugs in there for the people you mentioned, their YouTube
I
channels. So
Oh yeah. Well, Kara and Nate, we already did, but the other one that we follow is
yeah, I know.
Nomadic Movement. Very cool what they're doing actually on their homestead.
All
So
right, cool.
yeah, but so I'm going to stitch the ending together on this. So I think that we're good here. And thanks, Steve, for finally being able to join us.
Have fun now. As always, it's a treat. I'll talk to you next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Metro Mikey, for being here. And thank you all for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, give us a follow, share this episode, and leave us a review. That's how we grow. So thank you for listening. And as always, I will catch you on the next one.
To learn more about how to tell your story, connect with Nell at enTICEingmedia.com. That's ENTICEING media.com. Thanks for listening to the What the Nell podcast.